Hello, everybody. It's Mari-Lyn here of Hard at Work, and welcome back to the podcast series of Creating an Impactful Legacy. And so today on my call, I have Russell Novelty, and he's going to join us and tell us more about him and what he's up to and what's moving and shaking in his world. And I am sure it'll help you as well. So, welcome, Russell.
Thank you for having me. And I just have to say, it wasn't until you said the name of the podcast that I understood the puns. So I love it. I love it. As a writer, it's wonderful.
Okay, great. Thank you. So, tell us a little bit about maybe how you got started. I know you're a writer and you help other businesses and stuff, but maybe you could tell me a little bit more about how you got started into writing career or how you got into doing, where have you been? What have you been up to?
Sure. So I graduated University of Maryland in 2004, and I started working on Capitol Hill as a videographer doing live shots for
Hmm.
Fox News and MSNBC and Comedy Central. I met a lot of senators. I did State of the Unions and Easter egg rolls and all sorts of stuff. But while it sounds glamorous, I didn't really enjoy it. So I quit my job and I bought like $30,000 worth of gear, and I started shooting my own videos and shooting videos for other people,
Hmm.
directing movies and TV shows. And it just went so bad, so bad. It's so like I was so broke the whole time I was doing that. And so three companies that I had founded ended up going belly up before I turned 30.
Mm.
And I am a big believer that you should be able to dick around and do anything your heart desires until you turn 30. But the minute that you turn 30, like you got to grow up and take stock of your life and see where if you actually have the chops to do the thing. And I looked around and I was like, I'm not making any progress. So having no uh, 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 marketable skills, let's call it,
Okay.
because I have a degree in broadcast journalism and sociology, and those are not the most marketable skills that exist. I was left with sales because sales basically will take any warm body, especially when it's commission only sales. So
Hmm.
I could basically get a job in sales or sales. And so I started at Aflac and hated it. And then I went to a company called Recycler and started doing sellings. Uh, what would I call it? It's like advertising to car
Okay.
dealerships.
Okay.
And I was really bad at that too. And then I landed at a Sprint reseller. So I worked there for 6 months and I did just well enough to not get fired every month until it sort of clicked. And then it clicked, and I became their number one salesperson, and I became their sales manager,
Hmm.
and then I went out on my own in the middle of 2015, and that was just about the time that I had my publishing company, Wannabe Press,
Hmm.
working. I owned a Verizon dealership that I still own to this day, and so I kind of I learned how to sell and market myself and other people, and that sort of led me to being able to have a career that kind of succeeded where all of the other ones failed. So for the past 5 years, I've been writing and running a publishing company called Wannabe Press, running a training academy called The Complete Creative, including the podcast, The Complete Creative, helping other people do it. And yeah, we've been over six figures since 2017. And it seems to be going pretty well. As far as writing goes, though, I started writing in 2006,
Hmm.
really heavily in 2006. I directed my first movie in 2007. I got in a car accident at the beginning of 2008, which left me to do not. I couldn't shoot anymore. I couldn't direct stuff. Really, all I could do was write. It was the
Hmm.
only thing I could do while I was like in this neck brace.
Right.
And
Okay.
so I wrote and I wrote and I wrote and I wrote, and I heard a statement that your first 10 scripts are going to be garbage. So I just made it a habit to write as many scripts as fast as possible. So I wrote like 10 in 6 months, moved out to LA, and I started doing comics and novels and all sorts of stuff from there. And it's just now I can pretty much write anything.
Mm. As you were talking about being in sales, it's sort of like you finally found your feet and therefore you became successful as a salesperson. It's
Yeah,
like
I
you're
just
able to
didn't.
stand on your feet and think on your feet at the same time.
Well, I just didn't think that sales was important for a creative career. Honestly, like
Yeah,
I train all of my people now to understand that fact, but I was very pig-headed and bullheaded and uh, thought that my work would be so good that people would just find it. It's very common to the
right.
people that are starting their careers now.
Mhm.
Uh, but the thing is, once you failed 3 companies, you can't really blame anyone but yourself. And
Mhm.
so I really took a hard look and realized that it was that sales and marketing part of it that I was missing. And
Yeah.
most people are still missing it. And most people are shy away from it, but I love it, and I'm happy that other people don't want to do it because it makes it much easier for me.
Right, right. Yeah, that's sales and marketing is always 80% of your business. Even if you're a writer or an artist, anything, you have to be always out there. Otherwise, nothing's moving.
Yeah, they say that you have to be good at 2 things in business: the thing that you do and marketing. And
Yeah,
so I took
yeah.
that to heart. I Some weeks I spend a lot of time writing. Some weeks I spend very little time writing. I was talking to you before we got on that
Yeah,
this happens to be a very promotion heavy part of my calendar. We just finished a big launch, so I've been doing a lot of promotion.
you're right.
I'm sort of winnowing down the promotions that I'm doing so that I can spend some time actually writing. And I
Mhm.
like that. I like working in seasons where I always have a little bit of marketing stuff to do, but
Right.
generally I only go on these big bursts
Mhm.
every few months, and that helps me keep things in line. So I'm not always promoting or always writing. I'm
Mhm.
always doing a little bit of each, but then I have blocks of time blocked out where I have just this is where I'm going to do just a ton of promotion, and this is where I'm just going to do a ton of writing.
Right, right. Yeah. So then who's your client base then? Is it, authors or is it, you know, maybe you can fill me in on that.
Sure. So it's creatives who sell
Mhm.
products.
Mhm.
Generally, I do work with some people that do services, but
Mhm.
my skill set is really in developing products and then launching them
Mhm.
for creatives specifically. So authors or artists who have artwork
Mhm.
or sculptors or filmmakers or people that are making and putting together a product. But I also work sometimes with people who have never put a product together,
Mhm.
so course creators, a lot
Mhm.
of people like that who are trying to package something and productize it. And I think that the thing that I'm best at in business is to just form a product and then build hype for it. So almost everything that I've ever learned has eventually been productized, either as an epic blog post or a course or a book or something.
Right.
Uh, and so generally it's creatives and generally it's product based people that are selling some sort of product.
Right, right. Because I was just this I have a artist group. You'd probably be very interested in meeting them. They might be very interested in meeting you too. So anyway, some of the challenges that you face in business, you know, what are some of your biggest challenges that you face in business?
So when I first started, most of my work is in audience building. So I
Mhm.
help authors, a lot of authors and other creatives build their mailing list and social media platforms. And it used to be that I needed the audience, and now I need to bring the audience in, but I also have to keep them entertained and keep them from turning away and doing other things.
Mhm.
So roughly 10% at least. If you're doing things perfectly, 10% of your audience will churn every year, which means they'll
Yeah.
leave to something else. So
Yeah.
you always have to be refilling at least 10% every year. But more like 20 or 30% every year just to get that 10 good percent every year.
Right.
And and so you're always growing. So you don't want to ever be falling behind in that respect. So
Mm-hmm.
one of the biggest things is just keeping the audience entertained and feeding them enough content, because now they look to me as someone, as an arbiter and a curator of content, to make
Mm-hmm.
sure I have enough stuff for them to read and to buy. And
Right.
so uh, I spend a lot of my time curating other people's stuff,
Mm-hmm.
building my audience, and then launching products. So think I'm getting into a much better groove with the launching of products throughout the year.
Right.
Last year, I only did one big launch, and this year I have 4 big launches planned.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So, um, and then on top of that, it's just making sure that the audience is entertained, and then finding new ways to bring them into the community and
Right.
get them excited for whatever's new. So I'm this is a time of great societal and monetary change. And so,
Right.
uh, specifically now,
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking to, I basically have to pivot my entire business at least 50 degrees, because I've lost a third to half
Right.
my income,
Mm-hmm.
because I do so many live events.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm looking to, what product can I offer to offset that amount of
Mm-hmm.
money?
Mm-hmm.
And how can I maybe get some of the stimulus funds that are available to sustain me while I build something that will work in 2021,
Right.
when people will be far less interested in helping out businesses like mine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's always a big challenge, is having the financial resources to carry us through. So, can you give me an example of a success story of a launch that you did, or a client you worked with that became very successful for you, or you were able to help them?
So for my own launches, we
Mm.
just finished a big launch for a book called Cthulhu is Hard to Spell, The Terrible Twos. It's the follow-up to our most successful book ever.
Right?
And so it raised, I brought together 73 creators. I
Mm-hmm.
hired a co-editor, and we raised $31,000 on the launch during this time of upheaval.
Mm-hmm.
So I was definitely a huge success. I can't pull a client success, because
Mm-hmm.
usually what I do is sell courses, not work one on one with clients.
Right?
I know many of them have gone on to build their mailing lists and have big launches of their own.
Mm-hmm.
One of them just had about $10,000 launch for his book Impure Blood.
Right?
um, so I have a lot of clients that just return from my marketing services month after month, because
Mm-hmm.
they keep getting good leads, better leads than they're getting anyone else for there.
Right?
But for me, probably the biggest success was last year. I had a failed book launch. I have a book series called The God's Verse, and when I launched it, it just went so bad, went so terribly. And then I rebranded everything and just relaunched it in January, and it raised 10 grand during that launch. So
Right.
it
Awesome.
was nice to see something that was rebranded and then brought together, and then being able to be a success, and sort of taking
Mm-hmm.
clenching success out of the jaws of failure.
Right, right. Well, sometimes it's always the failures that on the other side is the rainbow, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of been my whole career. That's what I'm really obsessed with now, is
Hmm.
failure, and how to help people fail better, and how to help them have a safe space to fail, and understand like how to take the pieces of a failed
Hmm.
failure and turn it into a success, which I think is what happened with this book launch. We did this book launch and it went so badly, and I decided that I had a three steps to get out of this horrible like hole I dug myself. The
Right?
first was we relaunched our book series, Ichabod Jones Monster Hunter.
Mhm.
And so we did a Kickstarter for that, and it raised $16,000. To like that was step one. Step two was to rebrand and relaunch the God's Verse, which we did to raise about $10,000 on that book. And
Right.
step three was the Cthulhu is hard to spell, Terrible Twos, which we did a second volume of, and
Mhm.
that book just raised $31,000. So we went from a really pretty miserable failure last year. I
Yeah.
was in a very bad place last year to having those three successes back to back to back to
Mhm.
really pull us out of a round. And of course, now we're dealing with a whole new set of challenges.
Right, right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's all right. You because you've done it once, you know you can do it again,
And
right?
that's the great thing about when you have a path that you've walked before. So there's two sides of it. Like the one side of it is it's good to have the success that you can repeat over and over doing things,
Mhm.
but you also don't want to get complacent and that to be the only thing that you do. Because
Right.
even though it's something that is successful, there may be much more successful ways out there. Kickstarter is a great way to launch a product, but there are a lot of other avenues that can give you more sustainable income over time than Kickstarter can. So things
Right.
like Amazon with ads and just other things that you can do to drive other platforms as well and figure out how to work them together. So it's kind of daisy chaining where your success is and then building upon it each time, figuring out where the failure point is,
Right.
and then sort of chaining all together over time.
Mhm. Mhm. For sure. For sure. So, what do you think that you're doing to create an impactful legacy for yourself or your clients?
Um, so I thought that the thing that I did to create an impactful legacy was all tied to the Complete Creative, because in the Complete Creative in the Training Academy, we have epic blog posts and free courses and podcast archives, and we are, you know, we're I'm really trying to create a guidepost for people who want to build their creative career and have
Mhm.
an relatively unbroken chain of what it means to lead a creative life with mindset and creativity and sales and marketing as well.
Right.
I really thought that was when it was all said and done, people would that's what people would say was the most impactful thing for them about my legacy.
Right.
But recently, especially recently, I've been getting so many emails and messages about how much my novels have touched people and my comics have touched people that
Mhm.
I'm starting to switch to that idea that maybe it's both my novels and my comics and my training academy. Because the thing is, the training academy really helps creators. I mean,
Right.
it's set up to help a very specific kind of person, people
Right.
who want to build their career. But there's a lot of people that doesn't apply to. There are a lot of people that are just readers, and I'm very
Right.
happy that I have books that can impact them, that can get them motivated to do. I love it when people say that one of my characters like inspired them to do something, or one of my
Mhm.
books inspired them to do something. So I think uh, it's something that you don't think about when you first get started, what your legacy is going to
Right.
be. But
Right.
as time goes on, as you grow in a creative career, you start seeing these sort of tendrils you put out there, and it's beautiful to watch all of these it's beautiful to watch all of these people be impacted in different ways, and a lot of them you never know. Some of them come out of the woodwork 10 years later. Or I get a lot of emails after like 5 years after someone bought a book from me to like say something, and it's a lot of that stuff that I'm getting recently. I don't know if maybe it's because there's not a lot to do anymore except read
Yeah.
and reach out to people,
Mhm.
but it seems like in the past couple of months, I've been getting a whole lot of that kind of feedback from our anthologies and for our books. And I didn't even talk about our anthologies, because our anthologies are where we curate new talent and we bring people together and we create communities in our creator groups. So
Mhm.
I've seen creators work together. I've seen creators take their stories and and make them their own comic book series or book series. I've seen people have told me that uh, working on one of our books has been like the thing that that was the catalyst for them to start doing creator owned work again, or to do more, or to take a series and do more with it, or that they tried something and it really like unblocked them because they hadn't been writing. I
Right.
get a lot of stuff just by going on. It's weird how if you just keep doing stuff over time,
Mhm.
people will just say, wow, just the fact that you're doing something is like
Mhm.
is inspiring and helpful, because I have such a hard time
Right.
getting up in this climate or doing something, or I don't know where to turn, that
Mhm.
that just watching you like unabashedly go for it,
Right.
and is helpful even when you fail. So I mean, those are just a couple of the ways that I try to have impact with everything. That's really the cornerstone of everything that I do is about impact, and having the most impact on the most people.
Right, right. Well, no, it's important that we think about, how are we going to be in service? How are we being the servant leader? And then, of course, how does it impact the individual if that's who we're serving? Is this really so about all of that stuff? So, with that, great answer you gave. So, what are some couple of tips that you could share for the audience that they could do now, maybe just to help them get started doing whatever they want to do?
So I think that it's really the thing that I think that people get wrong about creating. Um, I'm going to assume that they have created some things before and they're not making their first product. Is that they don't have an idea of who they are serving
Right.
when they're making their work. The
Yeah.
business is really two things. It is the marriage between customer and product.
Right.
And I can't tell you how often I talk to a creator or anyone really,
Right.
and I
Yeah.
say, and they ask me, like, what should I make? And I say, well, I don't know. Like, what did your audience tell you? Who are you making stuff for? And they're like, I
Hmm.
don't know. And I'm like,
Right.
well, there's your first problem. So the clearer that you can get on who you make stuff for, and while you
Hmm.
can make stuff just for you, uh, it's hard to just make stuff for you,
Hmm.
and keep motivated to go on. If you're making something for someone else and then they like it, that gives you a lot of motivation to continue on with what you're doing, much
Right.
more than being self-motivated. So a lot of my work, when I write something, I actually think of somebody in the audience that's going to read it, and I'm like, wow, this specific person is going
Right.
to really like that moment.
Right.
And then when they read it and they like it and they come back to me, and I'm like, I know, I wrote that literally specifically for you. Um,
Yeah.
so it's a lot of making sure that you have an audience that you're going to serve. It doesn't have to be big, but
Yeah.
if you want to grow and scale, you have to know really well who you're writing for.
Hmm.
Um, and that goes to, your mailing list and your social media. The
Hmm.
clearer you get about the kind of person who enjoys what you do, the
Hmm.
easier writing an engaging newsletter is, and the better, easier it is to find content and to post pictures and do all the social media stuff, because you're now not doing it for you, you're doing it for somebody.
Somebody else.
And then
Right.
once you're doing it for somebody else, it's easier to find more of those people to do that stuff.
Hmm.
um, but it is important to talk about people who haven't started yet, and let's just say that you haven't started. And so my advice to you is that you have to give yourself the ability to fail and the opportunity to fail. This is true for even if you make something great as
Right.
well. You have to give yourself the ability to fail, because in failure, there's no high reward without some degree of failure. So you have to at least you have to become at least comfortable with failure,
Hmm.
but you don't have to go out into the world and try and sell a thing at first. You
Hmm.
don't have to do it ever unless you want to make a living doing this specific thing. A lot of people don't. A lot of people don't want whatever thing they do to be tainted by money. And there's all sorts of things that I could talk about with that.
Right.
But you won't be good at first.
Hmm.
You will be awful at the thing you want to do. It's guaranteed. Like
Yeah.
when I go into new lines of business, like suck at doing that. It takes me a long time to get spun up on all this stuff. Even just this conversation,
Right.
hundreds of hours have gone into me public speaking so that I could be like this,
Right.
be this good, which I don't even think is that good because I stammer a lot. But to
Okay, it's all natural.
but to know all of the things that I want to say, like I practice it all the time. And
Hmm.
so when someone looks polished, even slightly more polished than you, it's because they're working on it and they've done a lot of work to get there.
Right.
If you go out into the world and you don't sell something, it might
Hmm.
be because you have the wrong audience, but it might
Right.
be because you just are going out too early and you should go
Hmm.
back and be really, really concerned with getting to be amazing at the thing you're trying to do before you go out into the world and sell it. Because it's not easy to go out and sell things in this climate. There are so many amazing products. There are so many amazing
Hmm.
creators who are so far ahead of you. And
Hmm.
making something great is the bar.
Right.
You do need to have some idea of when you will say that I'm a good enough to go out and try and sell things,
Hmm.
because then you could be stuck in there forever. But
Right.
um, you know, it takes a long time. Malcolm Gladwell talks all the time about how people get 10,000 hours wrong and how
Right.
like it wasn't 10,000. That was like not really the point of the whole book. Um, but the 10,000
Right.
hours at least gives you a barometer of like how much effort you need to put forth.
Hmm.
And it needs to be focused effort. It can't just be effort for the sake of effort. It has to be the kind of effort that you're doing with intention,
Hmm.
with the desire to get better, with the knowledge that you will keep iterating on it over and over and over and over again. Otherwise, you'll just be doing the same mechanical motion, which I see all the time. I see all the time artists and writers specifically never improve because all they're doing is going through the same motion. They're not going through the same motion with intention to get better.
Mm.
So those are a couple of the things. If you don't have, if you're just starting, give yourself or safe space to fail. Understand that you're going to suck at first, and
Yeah.
but if you can make something great, then you really need to find a human uh, that you're making stuff for, and then figure out what to make for them, and get that product customer relationship really tight so that you can predict what this person is going to want before they even ask for it.
Right. Right. Yeah. No, great answer. Great answer. Because it's always, even my own challenge sometimes when I'm doing products or services, that to come up with that client. But then, after a while, for me, it's easier. It comes to me. But for some people, it just never comes. And so many times they fail. So, but thank you so much, Russell, for hanging out with me today. I so appreciate it. Is there
Absolutely.
any
Thank you for having me.
final words you'd like to say or anything? And before we end the call?
Sure. So, if you are a creative, I have a book called "How to Build Your Creative Career," which could
Okay.
help you
Mm-hmm.
go through and learn the 5 pillars that I think, which is how to create great content, how to
Right.
build a sales funnel and understand sales, how to build an audience, how to sell at live events, and how to launch
Mm-hmm.
products.
Right.
But I also have a podcast called The Complete Creative, which
Okay,
interviews
cool.
creators about how they build and sustain their creative career. I've had almost 200 episodes between the new iteration and the original iteration of the
Right.
show.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's tons of content about Kickstarter and building a career and mindset. And I've had some really amazing guests on the show
Yeah.
to fill that out. And then the whole completecreative.com is full of my musings for the past decade, basically,
Mm-hmm.
epic blog posts, free courses, and a whole lot more.
Okay, awesome. Great. You'll have to send me the link or make sure you send it to me so I can post it for you.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be awesome. Okay, well, thank you for joining us today. And Russell was certainly educational. I enjoyed what he had to say today. So I hope you did too. And you got 1 or 2 tips that you can apply in your business or development, whatever you're doing. So thank you for joining me, Russell, today. I really appreciate you coming on the show. And let's chat soon. And
Sounds
you'll
great.
also find Russell over on podcasts.heartatworkonline.org and on Anchor. I'll get those links posted out within the next week or so. And so take care, and I'll talk to you all soon. And remember, always be kind. Bye.